What's that mean? Good morning. Welcome to our temporary venue for the Water Parks and Wildlife Committee. I think we're going to get started as a subcommittee, although I think we just got a quorum, didn't we? Nope. One. Okay. We may soon establish a quorum, but we will go ahead and get started as a subcommittee. Is Senator Dutton here? There he is. Welcome, Senator Dutton. Let's begin with SB 261.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I think this is a very appropriate venue or room for an issue as important as water. So I think you rightfully belong here. Are you ready for me to commence? Do you want me to?
Ready when you are, sir.
Okay. Members of the committee and Chairman, I'm here today to present to you SB 261, a bill dealing with water use. And this bill is sponsored by the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority and supported by the Association of California Water Agencies, Western Growers and Farm Bureau. And they will, and also this is seeking to address, the purpose of the bill is to seek to address the governor's goal to reduce water use by 20% by 2020 in a manner that we hope will provide flexibility to local water agencies, but also promote water use efficiency in addition to conservation. This bill is attempting to address residential, commercial, and agricultural use in a way that recognizes the important differences between all those sectors and the unique constraints that we have within California. It's hard to find one-size-fits-all type policies, and this bill will attempt to do as good a job as we possibly can. But also, too, recognizing the importance that California has a unique water law, and it also tries to make sure that we continue to protect the rights of the people involved as well. This bill will emphasize the water use efficiency and flexibility for water agencies, as I said before, and help to reach an efficient and cost-effective way of meeting the governor's goals. We are aware that there's another bill that just passed the Senate Policy Committee yesterday. A large portion of the debate centered on the need to reconcile this bill with the approach of the other bill. I want to make that commitment that it's also my intent, too. I don't think like I said, it's hard to have a one-size-fits-all, but we should try to get all parties together and see if we can't come forward with a comprehensive plan that'll make sense for the generations in the future. And with me today, I do have representatives from the sponsor and the other agencies that I mentioned. And with that, I'll turn it over to them to make statements regarding the bill. And once again, I just wanted to say that my intention here is to come up with good state policy that will be beneficial in generations in the future, and I make a commitment, strong commitment, that I will be working with, continue to work to build up more support with all parties of interest. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to the sponsor and the other people here.
Good morning. My name is Celeste Cantu. I'm the General Manager of the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority. SAPA is composed of the 5 major Southern California water agencies that span the Santa Ana River watershed, and I'm here to urge your favorable consideration of SB 261. As you probably know, SAPA has a long, strong track record in the water conservation and its successes, and more broadly in water use efficiency throughout the region. Moreover, we continue to build on our past successes and look forward to contributing to the achievement of the Governor's 20 by 2020 goal. SB 221 is driven by water use efficiency and accomplishes the conservation goals along the way. The problem with conservation as a goal alone is that it doesn't go far enough. Conservation alone says, we don't care if you're a big water waster or if you're a very good water steward, you have to cut by 20% regardless. So if you're a very good water steward, that's not fair. But if you're also a very bad waster, that doesn't come close to going far enough. Water use efficiency seeks to define what is the appropriate amount of water so that every drop counts and no drops are wasted. Waste is just wrong in California. It's against the Constitution, and it makes no difference if Mother Nature sends you a whole lot of water or hardly any water at all. Waste is still wrong. That's all been established. So what we do is integrate water conservation with water use efficiency. So that includes local and water resource practices such as recycling water, contaminated groundwater cleanup, stormwater capture, and other water use efficiency actions. Achievement of high efficiency is defined in SB 261, and it requires considerable action for all purveyors, regardless of climate, location, or population. There is no free ride for any hydrologic region. This metric does not favor the coast or the inland region. It doesn't favor north or south. It is firmly rooted in decades of measurements by the California Irrigation Management Information System, CMIS. SB 261 defines high efficiency for both indoor and outdoor terms using this equitable measurement metric representing reasonable water use for the residential sector. Coastal or desert water suppliers alike have to make the same standard regardless of their climate. It seeks to move water suppliers from being simply suppliers of water to becoming water resource managers. It's a more holistic, systemic approach, and it engenders the kind of stewardship that we think is necessary for long-term water sustainability in California. So for our outdoor use, our target is 70% of the area's evapotranspiration rate for everybody. This outdoor measure, by its very nature, reflects efficient use regardless of local factors such as lot sizes or climate. As a measure, it is a measure of landscape efficiency irrigation overall. We seek to provide a transparent collection and availability of data so all can see how agencies are improving and meeting their requirements, and it allows for analysis and tracking of progress as we move forward. With respect to commercial and industrial use, we believe the best way to achieve feasible water use efficiency is to bring water agencies, commercial users, and other stakeholders together in a task force to develop water use efficiencies, best management practices for the wide variety of businesses. SB 261 is a true compromise of perspectives between SAPA and the Association of Water Agencies. The bill's not perfect in the eyes of all water agencies and some environmental groups perhaps, but we believe we've developed a credible framework and a process for not only achieving the 20 by 2020 goal, but to achieve long-term water sustainability for California. We've integrated carrots and sticks, as sticks alone are not efficient motivators. We have a flexible system with a regulatory backstop to energize the collaborative process. We've achieved all of our primary goals in SB 261. Specifically, we call for each water supplier to develop conservation plans. They also include implementation of foundational and programmatic BMPs in a matter that was developed and approved by the California Water Conservation Council. These vital concepts shine through in the process that we have worked with ACWA to develop, and both will advance conservation and, most importantly, water use efficiency by enormous strides. We also recognize, with hundreds of urban water management agencies throughout the state, the statute alone cannot be so prescriptive that it ignores the widely variety of circumstances for each agency. This process moves California to a truly accountable achievement of the 20 by 2020 goal and a sustainable water strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Motion by Mr. Berryhill, second by Ms. Fuller. Well, hold those motions and seconds until we get a quorum, and then we'll get back to you. We do have
we appreciate the thought, though.
Oh, Mr. Krikorian arrived, so why don't we take the roll, let's get the quorum, and then we'll do that again. One more. And we lost one. We're having some mathematical difficulties up here at the committee, but I think we're there. Let's call the roll.
Huffman.
Here.
Fuller. Here. Anderson. Arambula. Berryhill. Here. Blumenfield.
Here.
Caballero. Here. Fletcher. Krikorian. Here. Lowenthal. Perez. Salas. Yamada. Here.
We have a quorum, and we have a motion by Mr. Berryhill, second by Vice Chair Fuller. So Senator Dutton, please continue.
Okay, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have other sponsors of the bill that would like to make some brief statements as well.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tim Quinn. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of California Water Agencies. I have a very diverse membership of 450 approximately public agencies from one end of California to the other. And I agree with everything that Celeste said, and like SAPA, we're here to urge a yes vote on SB 261. I'm guided by some policy principles that my statewide board of directors has implemented. I brought copies of it. They've been provided to the committee before. We'd be glad to provide you with more. One of them, conservation principles, is mentioned in the staff analysis. The other, probably more important to me, are sustainability principles, in which my statewide organization is trying to move our industry towards a focus on environmental and economic sustainability, recognizing that conservation and water use efficiency play a vital role in that. The conservation principles consciously by my board are raising the bar significantly on everyone to do more conservation, frankly pushing our membership outside their previous comfort zones, because my board believes that's going to be necessary to accomplish where we need to go for sustainability purposes over the long term. The SB 261 is a comprehensive approach to conservation and water use efficiency that we think is highly consistent with those goals. I'm going to limit my comments. I do want to focus on one thing. The staff analysis describes SB 261 as a voluntary approach. That's true, but it's not strictly true. Under SB 261, everybody has to have a plan. Everybody has to quantify their long-term goals. Everybody has to implement that plan, and there's a strong, carefully designed process to make sure that those plans cumulatively get to the governor's 20 by 2020 goal and beyond. So this is a very different approach to conservation than has been typical in the past, and we're trying to get the right combination of carrots and sticks. Frankly, more emphasis on carrots because we think they will be more effective, but sticks as necessary to make sure that the overall statewide goal is accomplished. I want to elaborate on one feature of the bill that we think is very important. We call it the reconciliation process amongst ourselves. That's in the enforcement section of Article 3. We thought it was very important to have an entity that would provide two services. The first of those is a collaborative service providing advice to get my members to do more so we can accomplish the overall statewide goal. And the second was an accounting mechanism to make sure we are on track for the aggregate goal, and if not, there's a process to get more conservation happening so we can assure that we achieve the goal. SB 261 asks the California State University system to perform that reconciliation function, and briefly, we went there because we think they're ideal for it. There are 23 campuses in the CSU system all over the state of California. They know their areas well. They're well respected within their areas, and we thought that they were the right choice in terms of providing advice to get more conservation happening in local areas and making sure that we accomplish a statewide goal. In closing, last year I was the new executive director, and my organization was opposed to every conservation bill that came to the legislature. I don't think my board was comfortable with that. I know I wasn't comfortable with that. This year we're in strong support of a bill that will get the job done and will enjoy very broad support amongst the water community who are being asked to take these actions to make conservation happen. So I'd urge a yes vote so we can get to the process of reconciling the differences between AB 49 and SB 261 and take this important step for California water.
All right, thank you, Mr. Quinn. Other witnesses in support, and since we've had our primary witnesses, we're going to ask that you limit the rest of the testimony to your position, your affiliation, and we've got a lot of ground to cover here this morning, so thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Danny Merkley with the California Farm Bureau. I had hoped to address in 2 minutes, but I will not, at your request.
Danny, I apologize. I've just been told that we had agreed to 3 witnesses, so my mistake. Okay. Why don't you proceed as you had planned to do, and then we'll narrow it down after you. Okay?
Thank you.
I will be very, very brief. Thank you. The agriculture water use efficiency language in SB 261 was developed by a large, diverse group representing more than 30 production, agriculture, and business organizations like Farm Bureau, Western Growers, and Cal Chamber, as well as agriculture water suppliers like the Northern California Water Association and Friant Water Authority. This is not the first time we've stepped up Without a mandate, California farmers and ranchers have invested billions in new practices and technologies to apply water more efficiently. $1.5 billion in the San Joaquin Valley alone in just the last 5 years. In summary, the language requires agricultural water suppliers representing 75% of the irrigation water delivered to agriculture to prepare and adopt agricultural water management plans, submit a plan every 5 years to the Department of Water Resources describing efficient water management practices that were implemented, similar to those requirements for urban water suppliers. Identifying additional efficient water management programs or practices that will be implemented that are locally cost-effective and technically feasible since the last report. It also requires them to estimate the quantity of water applied water recovered and reused since the last report, to estimate the reduction in the amount of irrecoverable applied water, if any, since the last report, and lastly, measure the volume of water delivered to customers with sufficient accuracy. Please understand that this language was heavily debated in a good faith effort among those that I mentioned and more to produce tangible agricultural water use efficiency measures. This language demonstrates agriculture's genuine desire to be part of the solution while continuing to produce safe, healthful food and farm products in California. Surely this work product demonstrates that agriculture has and is stepping up and is not a third rail when it comes to water use efficiency. These are real measures that will continue to produce real results, not an empty program that looks good on paper. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Martinez, the California State University. We are in support of the measure, and with me is David Zaldowski, the Chancellor's Water Resources Policy Initiative, to answer any technical questions you might have.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to say I'm the Executive Director for the Water Resources and Policy Initiative, representing over 200 faculty members and researchers in water, and that we are currently engaged in millions of dollars worth of contracts with the DWR and the State Water Quality Control Board, so we have a history of working with the state.
Other witnesses in support?
Bill Gregg, representing the California League of Food Processors. Our members represent the vast majority of fruit and vegetable processors in California. With the proposed amendments, we're in support.
Kathy Mannion, Regional Council of Rural Counties, here in support specifically of the agricultural water use efficiency language. Thank you.
Tony Francois for the Western States Petroleum Association, in support of the bill. Thank you.
Tim Schmelzer, Wine Institute, in support.
Valerie Nero for the California Chamber of Commerce, in support.
Gail Delahunt with Western Growers, in support especially of the ag language.
Justin Oldfield with the California Cattlemen's Association, in support.
Jennifer West, representing Inland Empire Utilities Agency. We are in support, and we're supportive of reconciling the two bills with AB 49. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Glenn Farrell with the Friant Water Authority. We're in support of this measure that takes significant steps in advancing the ball on ag water use efficiency, and it represents an integral component of a comprehensive water package.
Crystal Jack on behalf of California Citrus Mutual, California Rice Commission, California Cotton Growers and Ginners Associations, and the Nisei Farmers League, in support.
Casey Elliott on behalf of the Orange County Water District, in support.
John Rossi, Western Municipal Water District of Riverside County, in support of SB 261.
Pilar Oñate Quintana with KP Public Affairs, here on behalf of Mojave Water Agency, in support.
Patrick Leathers with the Gualco Group, in support on behalf of the Ag Council of California and the California Association of Wine Grape Growers. Appreciate the author and staff working out some of our food and beverage content language. Thank you.
Any other witnesses in support? Seeing none, let's go to witnesses in opposition or other. I know there's sometimes other.
It is another. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kathy Cole of the Metropolitan Water District. I'm in that transition period here. As you all know, Metropolitan is the regional wholesaler for Southern California, cover a 5,200 square mile service area. Ultimately, the water we deliver touches the tap of 19 million Southern Californians. I Actually, as a co-sponsor of AB 49, and we were there also last year on AB 2175. And as you know, 49 did pass the Senate Water Committee yesterday. We know how critical it is that California embrace and advance water use efficiency as an important element of a comprehensive and successful water policy throughout the state. Absent a closer review of the contents of SB 261 and any future amendments thereto, I do wish to express our support for 261, provided it is amended to align with the Metropolitan Board adopted policy principles from May 2009. We view a plan for statewide water use efficiency and resource development as a component of a comprehensive water plan for California, with a fix of the Delta ecosystem and the water delivery system as centerpiece of that plan. As for water use efficiency, we support setting reasonable performance measurements for water districts to live up to in the coming years. For MET, it is particularly important that any workable plan to recognize previous gains in conservation and water recycling when establishing the baseline and 2020 targets. Modifications to SB 261 will be necessary to meet this objective. Essentially, it is also necessary to provide urban water suppliers with a flexible framework from which to seek an approach that is feasible and cost-effective for their respective service areas. SB 261 is consistent with that board policy. SB 261 recognizes that each urban water supplier is unique, being located in specific climatic regions and having various degrees of investments in conservation over time, and promotes development of new alternatives to imported supply. Our adopted board policies are designed to ensure that all sectors of water use contribute to achieving the water use efficiency goals of the state. We will work with the proponents of SB 261 to reflect more of alignment with the adopted policies of our board in that regard. It is also very important to note the accomplishments in water conservation and improvements in water use efficiency over the past 20 years are due in large part to water agencies' willingness to collaborate on research and evaluation through the California Urban Water Conservation Council. Metropolitan has been an active member of that council since 1991. SB 261 proposes to replicate these efforts through the California Water Resources Institute. We hope to work with the proponents to address these issues, as we believe the ongoing work of the Council through its members is the most effective framework to addressing the challenges we face in achieving the 20% goal. One of our other board policies is that eligibility for grants and loans be based on compliance. SB 261 unfortunately goes beyond this and provides for a 20% preference for IRWMP projects. This would disadvantage projects designed for implementation across a broader region, limit the ability of retail water suppliers to collaborate on regional programs, and could potentially reduce cost effectiveness for projects. So we look forward to working with the Senator and the proponents on that point. We also have concern that the 20% reduction per capita water use has been translated to a statewide goal of 1.7 million acre-feet. Population in the state is projected to increase from 39 million in 2010 to 44 million in 2020. With a defined savings goal, we would hope that this would not result in a less savings per capita and not achieve the 20% reduction. So again, we want to work with the Senator and the proponents on that. So in closing, we look forward to more discussions with the proponents of 261 and remain open to new ideas to improve water use efficiency in all regions and all sectors of the economy in real, verifiable, and reasonable ways. And we are committed to getting to that end goal. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senator. My name is Chris Brandon. I'm the Executive Director of the California Urban Water Conservation Council, and we're here neither in support nor opposition. We basically just wanted to express concern about the duplicative language in the bill for an existing reporting and technical assistance structure that's served California well for the last 20 years. We do want to recognize that the bill acknowledges the Memorandum of Understanding, which is called out in the Water Code numerous times to support water conservation in California. And the Council's management of the MOU over the last 20 years has led to California being recognized nationally and internationally as a leader in water conservation. The BMP reporting database that our members and signatories, including contracted water purveyors of the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, use is publicly accessible. It's open source of information, so it's used by the state, by water agencies, and by the public to measure and evaluate the success of water conservation. The BMPs are continually re-examined and updated so that we get the best in water conservation for California. And we would encourage working with the author to include the council in future development of the BMPs and water conservation reporting.
All right, thank you very much. I see that the agreed-upon witnesses in opposition have taken their places, so why don't we move back to the dais and hear from them.
Chairman Huffman, committee members, my name is Jim Metropolis with the Sierra Club. We are opposed to SB 261. The bill is very problematic, and I just don't see how it can be reconciled with the better bill that was passed out of this committee earlier this year, AB 49. Looking at specific problems with the bill, I've noticed that the author has cleaned up the findings in the bill. I would still say they're very problematic. On page 12, line 30, number 5, it says, one of the findings is, acknowledges that incentive-based programs will be more effective in improving water management than command and control approaches. This passage seems to imply that it's more effective to give rebates for toilets than for water agencies to prohibit watering lawns 7 days a week, 24/7. I would like the proponents to give me examples of what incentive-based programs outside of the state throwing monies at these water agencies to do water conservation programs that are better than regulatory approaches to water conservation. The other problems with the bill, we feel that this data collection at the California State University of Fresno is very duplicative of the private efforts going on at the California Urban Water Conservation Council. The council is already collecting data on the water agencies that are working and implementing the 14 best management practices. We don't see the need for a new state agency at this time when the state is bleeding red. I'd also like to point out another big problem with the bill. That is Article 5 on page 23 of the bill dealing with regional implementation. This bill is going to destroy the incentive to comply with the best management practices that was created in AB 1420. And it's safe to say that in the last couple of years since AB 1420 has passed, numerous water agencies have been more interested in the tie between the right to qualify for state grants and the compliance with the BMPs. This bill severs that relationship and could lead us to a potential dropping off of water agency interest in the BMPs in conservation. And it does that because the bill gives a 20-point percentage advantage to state grants to these regional management groups, irrespective of whether that regional management group is in compliance. They even get this 20-point advantage over retail agencies that are in compliance with the BMPs. So in other words, the most important incentive many retail agencies have in getting in compliance with the BMPs is to qualify for state grants. By making it nearly impossible for retail agencies to compete against even non-conserving regional water management groups for state funds, this bill threatens to push California back to where we were a few years ago, with wide disinterest and non-compliance with the BMPs. For these reasons, we ask that you oppose the bill and not vote it out of committee. It's very problematic. It's a feeble approach in an attempt to put into law the governor's call for 20 by 2020 urban water use reduction. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Huffman, members of the committee. My name is Ronnie Cohen. I'm with the Natural Resources Defense Council, and our position is opposed unless amended. We are also a co-sponsor of AB 49 with Metropolitan. We do appreciate the efforts that the authors have made on this bill, and we particularly appreciate their stated commitment and the commitments of the sponsors to maximize water use efficiency and to eliminate waste. We don't necessarily feel that this bill will do that. We believe the state needs to adopt an approach, as it has for energy efficiency, that really maximizes water use efficiency. Water use efficiency is going to be the cheapest and fastest way to meet the needs of California, water needs of California, and is also going to provide energy savings and help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I have three major concerns with SB 261. The first is that while a lot of the conversation here has been about water use efficiency, SB 261 actually puts a lot of other water management, water use, water supply tools in the same basket. Now, we are not opposed to using a wide range of tools. We believe, in fact, that we do need to use a full range of tools to help California meet its water supply needs. However, those are not all the same as water use efficiency. And as I said, we do believe that maximizing efficiency should be key. If you add in all these other tools, then the bar in 261 is set in the wrong place. The 20% reduction in per capita water use is something that is fully achievable with water use efficiency. If we're going to be adding in conjunctive use and desalination and a whole range of other tools, then we need to be expecting to gain more water from those alternate supplies. So that's one concern. Even if we're just looking at water efficiency, though, I believe the bar is still set too low, because as Kathy Cole from Metropolitan pointed out, the 1.7 million acre feet that is referred to in SB 261 relates to a 20% reduction in current water use. But since we do expect to see some new people in California, we think that by 2020, a 20% per capita reduction would translate into closer to 2 million acre feet of water. The second area of concern is that all sectors need to be fully included. While the SB 261 does require development of best management practices for commercial, institutional, industrial users, it doesn't actually require anyone to adopt those best management practices. Similarly, with agriculture, we're pleased to see the inclusion of agricultural water management plans, but without requiring that cost-effective measures actually be implemented, we don't think we're going to achieve what we need to in that sector as well. And finally, there is the timing question that was raised by the committee analysis. If we have round after round of plans before we bring any meaningful consequences, we're putting off by 5 years or more the implementation and the achievement of these goals, and we don't believe the state has that time. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Bob Reeb with Reeb Government Relations, and I'm representing 4 urban water suppliers, Desert Water Agency, East Valley Water District, Newhall County Water District, and El Dorado Irrigation District. Their position is opposed unless amended. Briefly, I will point out just 4 of the, I think, the key issues that they are seeking to work out with the author and sponsors of this measure. First, there is no credit in the baseline definition for recycled water or accelerated water conservation efforts. Desert Water Agency and El Dorado Irrigation District both made substantial investments of ratepayer funding for recycled water and participation in the California Irrigation Management Information System back in the 1990s, post the 1991, 87 to 91 drought. Their baseline would not recognize credits for those investments. We think they should be rewarded for that early good behavior and not penalized for that. We appreciate, the second point is we appreciate the alternative path towards achieving water conservation savings in the bill. It's kind of referred to as Clause 3. It would be for those entities that are not signatories to the MOU of the California Urban Water Conservation Council. That's a voluntary consensus-based project, but not all urban water suppliers chose to become a part of that, a signatory to that. They should be required to conserve as well, but they should have an alternative path. The bill refers to programs that are as least as effective as. Our concern with that reference is we read that to mean same water conservation savings, but the MOU recognizes locally cost-effective measures. Clause 3 doesn't have a reference to locally cost-effective, so we think there's a concern and that needs to be clarified. You've heard a lot this morning about incentives and how we should incentivize conservation behavior. My clients also have concerns with the grant and loan provision language in the bill. We think that we should be trying to provide a preference in IRWMPs to disadvantaged areas where, frankly, the income levels don't support increasing water rates in order to raise the funds to pay for conservation measures. DWR in its draft 20 by 2020 plan recommends accelerating meter installation. The American Water Works Association has found that the simple installation of a meter on average reduces water use by 30%. So we've got some significant population centers in the state that aren't yet fully metered. We should try and accelerate that using state funds. There are also small water systems that aren't subject to the mandatory metering law of the state. We should also incentivize and accelerate those. We also should be looking at providing state monies for local areas to fund projects that are not locally cost effective, but that would yield significant water savings if implemented. And the last point would be the DWR regulatory role. The Urban Water Management Planning Act that we've been working under for the last 15, 20 years is a holistic approach. It requires suppliers to balance supply and demand. Now we're taking conservation and setting that kind of outside and above everything else. So we're opposed to that regulatory role without some additional protections for political subdivisions of the state. And in conclusion, last week I asked this committee to hold this bill to allow us to work to address these issues. In the last 24 hours, based on commitments by Senator Dutton and in meetings with his staff and sponsors, I believe that I have some good commitments to work on these issues going forward, and so I would withdraw that request and encourage you to move this bill and basically direct that we try and get 261 and 49 together by the end of session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Other witnesses in opposition? In opposition, Mr. Leathers? Oh, I'm sorry.
You have a neutral category still?
We did. We'll reopen that category.
All right.
If you'd
I
like.
appreciate that. Park Terry, representing the California Landscape Contractors Association. First of all, we're very supportive of water conservation. We know that landscaping constitutes about 40% of urban water use, so we're very cognizant of our responsibilities and the need to address that issue through improvements in landscaping. Our only concern at this point was some new language that got into the bill in June 29th, and it's on page 15, beginning on line 18. There are two undefined terms in the bill now. One is traditional. It talks about replacing traditional outdoor landscaping with climate-appropriate landscaping. Our association has always supported performance-based standards for water conservation, and so we're perfectly happy to live with a design standard that directs us to only use a given amount of water on a particular landscape depending on its climate situation. But we are always very wary of government agencies trying to define or dictate the types of landscaping that any particular property owner should install because we just think that's inappropriate. So we're happy to work with the author on that, but I did want to bring this to your attention, and hopefully we can get it refined to more of a performance-based standard than a prescriptive standard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Pat Leathers with the Gualco Group on behalf of the Solano County Water Agency. We, too, have had conversations as of this morning with the sponsors of the bill, staff. They're aware of a number of technical items that we would like to see amended into the bill. Rather than go into those, I'd like to introduce the general manager of the Solano County Water Agency to really focus on one important aspect, and because we would like to see this bill move along. But with that, David Okita.
Yeah, we offered some amendments to the committee to clarify, which we now understand the intent of the bill is to maintain the locally cost-effective exemption for best management practices, which has been in place for over 20 years. It basically says that if a conservation measure is not locally cost-effective based on local conditions and local price of water, you don't have to do it. The bill is very clear on the ag side that the locally cost-effective exemption is maintained. There are references in the urban side to that, but our amendments will clarify that and make our understanding the same as the sponsors, is that they intend to maintain that exemption. And if that exemption is maintained, we would support the bill. I should also mention that exemption is in state law now. AB 1420, which was passed by the legislature last year concerning eligibility for water grants, requires everybody to do best management practices, but maintains the locally cost-effective exemption. Same thing on the federal side. The Federal Conservation Program also maintains the locally cost-effective exemption. So what we're requesting is a clarification to the bill to maintain that on the urban side.
Thank you.
I realize I'm the fourth.
this. I realize I'm the fourth speaker in opposition, so I'll be brief. Charlotte Hottie from Planning and Conservation League. We are opposed to the bill for the reasons represented by Natural Resources Defense Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Other witnesses in opposition?
Lori Chen on behalf of Clean Water Action echoes the sentiments just presented.
All right. I think that we have another witness. Okay.
My name is Bill Martin. I represent my household in San Francisco, where we've been conserving water for 30 years. I'm opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Let's bring it back to the committee. And I think we're probably going to have several questions or comments. But let me, if I can, Senator, kind of lead this off. You said something that I'm very interested in hearing in your testimony. You said you were very interested in working to try to reconcile this bill with AB 49 as things go forward, and that's, I think, an important message for purposes of what we're doing today. But I'd like to ask you to be a little bit more specific on that. Do you have any specific areas of the bill that you would be willing to volunteer this morning that you would be willing to modify to be more consistent with AB 49?
Absolutely, and also, too, I'd like to do, with your permission, just like some of the concerns that was raised by MWD, for an example, with regards to adoption of their 2009 policies and so forth. I did check with the sponsor. That's not a problem. We can work through it. What I'd like to do is maybe have the sponsor actually address some of the issues that were brought up to give you some idea about where we are going, and also we can address, they can also address AB 49 at the same time, if it would please you to go that direction.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I guess I'll start off. I feel like we're in a pretty good spot. Halfway between, or somewhat between, the Sierra Club's concerns. They have an oppose unless amended, and Bob Reed's concerns oppose unless amended. So it's not such a bad spot to be in. And it kind of reflects all the hard work that we've done to date to pull together some pretty divergent views. Of the comments we heard today, many of them are things that we can accommodate, we had discussed, we're very close to. Some of them are things that we actually already intend to do or already have done that have been misreadings. So I don't see...
Let's be specific about that.
Okay. On Kathy Cole's comments on Metropolitan Water, I didn't hear her say anything that we have a problem with. Tim, would you agree with that?
The devil's in the details, but yes.
As in terms of data collected being duplicative, we had a lot of discussions on that. What we intend to do, the format that we expect to have happen, is that the data that water districts are already collecting in response to CUWCC would be the exact same data on the same format that they could then use for reporting. So it's very efficient for the water suppliers. They don't have to reinvent information twice. So we're very sensitive about that.
What about the submission of the data to the new Cal State entity? Several witnesses in opposition had concerns about that, thought it was duplicative, thought it might undermine the California Urban Water Conservation Council. And am I hearing you say that you're willing to remove that from the bill?
We certainly do not want to undermine the California Urban Water Council. They've done a fantastic job, but we are very concerned with the cost of the entire program. We want to keep costs at the absolute minimal, and those of us who are graduate students remember how we were so completely exploited, and therefore add tremendous amount of value to research, evaluation, data collection and analysis and assistance that we feel that a CSU can provide.
How does creating a new structure in a new entity make it cost effective when we have an existing one?
Chairman, if I may add something to that point, one of the concerns that I've always had with regards to our educational system, both the UC and CSU, is I think that it's one of the most underutilized assets that we have in this state. And I think it also gives a great deal of credibility. So I'm not so sure that it's like creating a new. I think it's actually wanting to set up a mechanism, and we can talk how to best do it, but I think not use the research and systems within our higher education system actually would be irresponsible on our part. So what I would like to do is see us, if I appreciate where their concerns are, but
the universities, the CSU system is already working in these areas, and they have a tendency to target also specific things in specific areas. So,
well, to be fair, Senator, I don't think they are working in this area. I don't think we've ever asked a university of any kind to review these kind of long-term planning documents for public water agencies, and yet we have had the Urban Water Conservation Council doing something very similar to this. And so I guess I would like somebody to speak to, A, what's broken with using the Urban Water Conservation Council, and B, why would it necessitate taking this function away and giving it to a new startup at the Cal State system?
Well, let me address that if I can. And again, David Zodalski is here from the California State University. You might want to get his views on this issue as well. This is something that grew up in the process. We frankly looked at a variety of alternatives. When we thought about going in the direction of having Koch do this, we ran into resistance on the Senate side on the argument that it should be a state agency. And quite frankly, I have a long-standing, very positive relationship with the California State University system, and have been talking to David Zodalski for some time about how to get more value from a statewide perspective out of what David's doing at CSU. I want to emphasize the Water Resources Policy Initiative that David heads is not, it wouldn't be a new thing. It exists today, and it exists for the purpose to knit together the expertise on the 23 campuses, of the California state system. So for us, this seemed like a natural, very low-cost way to fulfill the function. I want to emphasize we're willing to talk about alternatives. I'm not willing to commit to take the CSU alternative off the table at this point in time, because we think it's something that at a fairly low cost would work.
That was the specific response I think that I was looking for. If the professor has something to add to that, I guess he's welcome to do that.
Just, I wanted to note that we're really not a startup organization. We've been around 25 years working in water conservation. We work very close with water districts. A lot of the...
I didn't suggest you were a startup organization, but the role of reviewing these brand new plans and
well, all I
doing
can
that
say
analysis
is that,
would be a startup.
I would just say that we've been active both in the urban and the ag side, and this bill addresses the ag side as well, so let's not lose that in the conversation. And we have a long history of working water districts on both sides, or I should say both areas of water deliveries, and a lot of the stuff that the studies and other things that we've done now implement rebates and policies even with MWD and other folks in Southern California in golf courses and stuff. So we've been very integrated into moving forward the water conservation efforts of the state, both in ag and urban. I think that's one of the things we bring to the table.
Well, thank you for that. And Senator Dutton, I think I got the clear answer that you're going to keep the CSU piece in, so that takes care of that issue. Let me go on to one issue that is particularly troubling for me as someone who's been working on urban water conservation issues at least for, gosh, I guess it's about 15 years now, going back to my 12 years on an urban water district board. And what I see in this bill is a conflating of new alternative water supplies, which is very important, and demand reduction, which is what we normally think of when we think of water use efficiency. And in fact, you've explicitly defined desalination as conservation for purposes of this bill. I've been a supporter of good desalination projects for some time. I've got a lot of enthusiasm for that tool being on the table, but I would never want to confuse it with water use efficiency and demand reduction. So fundamentally, also I would add that the language is broad enough that I could actually see it including any local water supply as within the ambit of conservation, which I think really does begin to confuse and undermine the whole concept of demand reduction that should be the core of water use efficiency. So I would need to have a commitment from you that that's going to come out, that we're going to get back to actual water conservation as this bill goes forward. Now, I think water recycling should count. So I think you can include that, and AB 49 does include that as conservation. But any alternative supply, any local supply, really does kind of stretch the definition beyond the breaking point, in my view, and I'd like you to respond to that.
Yeah, I'm going to let the sponsor a little bit, but I will give you a personal commitment that my general policy on major policies like this with the state. Besides that, I'm part of the minority party, so I'm not going to confuse myself with trying to think I've got more power than I may have. The reality is that what we're trying to do here is actually come up with the best of both worlds. I think there are some things that are important in AB 49. I don't want to diminish them. We have to wait and also see how things fit together. I want to go back to the CSU issue once again. I'm not trying to cut anything out. I'm trying to make it better. Okay, and if there are ways, just because it's something that we've done traditionally or historically year after year after year, that doesn't mean that it's the best way to do it. So I respect your background, your experience. I just want to make sure that we keep our options open as we move forward, if you'll allow us to move forward, so that we can try to merge the best of both and see if we can't come in with a win-win scenario. My goal, although I know it's not 100% achievable, would be basically to get everybody in agreement. The NRDC, Sierra Club, everybody. Because then I think we truly have a win-win that we can actually move forward and do something very positive. But let me once again have the sponsor address your specifics. Go ahead.
Our goal is not just conservation, but rather a sustainable water strategy for California, and that includes moving people from the concept of water suppliers to moving them into being water resource managers. And so what that means to us in SAPA, and what we've done, is we look at recovering existing water, not necessarily the development of new water. Recovering existing water, we do a lot of groundwater desalinization. There are groundwater aquifers throughout the state of California that have been forgotten because they've not been cost effective, or because it's just easier to import or divert or dam, et cetera, et cetera. We think that's wrong. We think good housekeeping is critical to being good water resource managers and to get us on the road to sustainability. It addresses greenhouse gas reduction. It addresses many of our other goals, and we think to look at conservation only as a very limited, almost a cap of 20% alone does not go good enough. We believe if we are successful, as we are confident we will be, in water use efficiency, we're going to be conserving over 20%. So we have confidence in that.
Certainly, if we define conservation in that way, it becomes easier to do. And I want to just tell you, Ms. Cantu, you guys have done great things at SAPA. I've been down there personally, and I support the diverse portfolio of water supply strategies that you have modeled, I think, for the rest of the state. So I want to be clear. I support the alternative supply approach that you are trying to reflect here, but I just think as a matter of public policy, it's wrong to conflate that with demand reduction and call it conservation. It's a different thing. It's a good thing. It's an important thing, but it's not conservation.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, let me first emphasize the willingness we recognize that what tools go in this particular toolbox is something that needs to be worked out. And if you're concerned that SB 261 is too expansive, there's also concerns about having a too restrictive definition of the tools. I frankly prefer the notion of efficiency, where water reuse is more efficient use of existing available supplies to get to get more output out of a given level of inputs. But do we want to exclude stormwater recapture, for example, which can be, again, you're reusing molecules of water in a way that we want to encourage. So I think this is a topic we need to work through, but I think we want to make sure we get the right mix of tools, and if we're perhaps going too far, there's risks in not going far enough. Everybody wants to encourage all these things to happen. Let's make sure that we get a bill that does that.
Well, at a minimum, I would hope we could agree, if the bill is to go forward, that desalination is a bridge too far on conservation. We can talk about stormwater capture, we can talk about some other tools, but it just kind of strains credulity to say that seawater desalination, and I support it in some cases, is now defined as conservation. Would you agree with me on that, at least?
I'm a big proponent of groundwater desalinization and groundwater aquifer cleanup resources we already have.
You know, I think what I would do, I'd be, certainly make a commitment here. I think one of the challenges we all have is that what conservation may mean to some people is different than what it may mean to others. And we're going to have to get on a common ground as to what it means. But desalinization, like you pointed out, it's not that you're against it. You just don't feel that it, in the total scope of things, that it should have a significant role in trying to achieve, true efficiency or conservation. in Southern California, like I have one city in my district, Yucaipa, frankly, they don't have access to any groundwater situation. They have to go with a desalination plant in order. So they look at it as a good conservation and efficiency. So I think you pointed out some good issues that need to be agreed to. I would agree in concept that our intention is to come up with something that actually meets the goal, and then we can further discuss this. But my concern would be I don't think I'd want to totally discount the value of desalination. I'm not trying to clean up the entire ocean. Although Salton Sea might not be bad, do a little work down there. But in any case, I think we can make the commitment that, I think we need to come together as far as what exactly the definitions are, and we're more than happy to work to tighten that down even further.
All right, let me go to Vice Chair Fuller.
What I love about this bill is there's something for everybody to hate, and it's a share the pain bill. And usually that's a good compromise bill. And I believe that in order for us all to meet our objectives, we need to work together and move somewhere to the place where we can get started. I'm thinking that as I look at AB 49, it was moved out of the Senate as a work in process, and there was a lot of focus on AB 49 working with this bill. I know, Senator, that your reputation in the past is that you are the person that can bring difficult opinions to the table and work through the issues. So I'm just, I like the idea that there's the majority, not all, of the water groups and ag groups sort of reluctantly maybe supporting this bill, and that is a huge step forward. And I would like to take that willingness and those best practices and those people who have already demonstrated that they're willing to be out there in the water and ag community and move this forward and put them in the same room with the conservation people and refine some of the terms. So I guess I'm just sort of suggesting that maybe we could move this forward and get them together and let them work out some of the differences. To the chair.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Yamada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, with all due respect to the chairman's statements about seawater desalination, I'm not as vociferously or vehemently opposed to having that as one of the many options in this bill. So, again, in the spirit of trying to work things out, and as a former resident and maybe someday in the future a resident of San Diego again, with the beach in my future, I don't, when our family moved here from San Diego in 1995, I think one of the things I missed the most was the beach area. So I think that we ought to maintain a spirit of openness. That would be my perspective. But again, with all due respect to the chair, I don't have as much of an objection than he does. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the committee? All right. Yes. I'm sorry, Mr. Berryhill.
Yeah, just very short, folks. This is part of the process, I think, and there's a lot of stuff to love about this bill. There's a lot of things, obviously, not to like about it. But I think at the end of the day, this is a deal about a conference committee and putting two things together. So as the senator mentioned, this can be a win-win for everybody, and it'd be very nice to move this along, in my opinion, and get it to a point where at some point in time we could all agree that this is a good thing. And I'm certainly going to give this thing my support today and would hope that everybody moves this thing along.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Berryhill. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Mr. Rambula.
Very quickly, H2O is 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen. Maybe the AB and the SB are the 2 hydrogens, and we'll just look for some oxygen to put it together.
Are we splitting atoms and getting into Mr. DeVore's subject matter here? Any other comments or questions? Yes, Ms. Salas.
Well, I was really happy to sit through much of the discussion because I was really undecided about which way I was going to go on this bill. But I think that I'm going to stay off the bill for today, and the reason being is that, in today's world where we're having to watch every penny And, we have to be very mindful of where we're going to spend our resources to get to where we need to go. There are a couple of things that I find problematic about the bill, and that's, the requirement that the Cal State Institute is going to be added into this, and that may delay further the implementation of water conservation projects, and also that we're being asked to have some unappropriated funding to pay for it, and we've got an organization in place that could carry on this work. So for that reason, I'll be laying off the bill today.
Senator Dutton, would you like to close?
Yeah, I think my closing would be fairly simple. I was going to maybe address a concern with regards to funding and source, but there are some dollars that are available in existing bonds, things like that. So I'm not as concerned about that. But I think basically with regards to this bill, one of the biggest challenges we'll probably have is AB 49 takes a command and regulate type approach, and we're trying to do as much as we can to try to encourage the common sense to also come into play, but to also have a trigger that would get into command and regulate if necessary. Okay, and so I think that's really kind of important too. I've been involved in trying to do development in various areas. I remember working up in the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency domain in some projects over there, and I was shocked and amazed on the Nevada side that you couldn't even connect a simple tub drain without getting some type of bureaucratic red tape process that you had to go through. Well, what was happening up in that region for a lot of years is that people ignored what was going on. They went ahead and did whatever they wanted to do, and that was the even worse scenario. And so when you become too regulatory heavy-handed, that's exactly what's going to happen. So I just think it's important for us to, when we take a look at California and its diverse interests and the things in Northern California are different than Southern California. Central Valley's different. It's tough to come up with a one-size-fits-all, which is the other reason of my, and maybe I'm wrong in my thinking, and I would allow you to certainly express to you, give me correct me in maybe the way I'm looking at this, but just like the CSU thing, I looked at that as being a positive because you'll actually get people that know the state from various areas, and it's not as political and things like that. But I think it's important about moving this bill forward is that I'm trying to create there's a sincere effort here to reconcile the differences and try to come in with that win-win scenario, and that reflects a compromise between all stakeholders. And that's what's really going to be important, is that everybody's going to have to compromise and to come in with a policy that is going to serve the state best for the future. And so with that's my sincere desire. To want to see this bill move forward. I think it's beyond just a work in progress. It is a work in progress to a certain degree, but it goes beyond that. It has bipartisan support. As a matter of fact, it came out of the Senate on a 39-0 vote. The one that we were missing is because we had a vacancy at the time that the bill came up for a vote. So it basically came out of the Senate on a unanimous vote. I would hope that you would allow it to continue to move forward so that we can actually try to come up with a policy that's going to be beneficial for the future of California. And so with that, I would respectfully request an aye vote.
All right, thank you, Senator. And just for clarification, you had some amendments here today.
Yes. And those are part of it. So
you are taking those amendments as authors' amendments today, and the committee amendments rather, and the motion from Mr. Berryhill and the second from Ms. Fuller is reflective of the bill as amended for the record.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, thank you very much. I want to commend you for wading into a very difficult, complicated issue. This is hard work, trying to thread the needle on these policies.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. One quick point of clarification. Yeah. I know that the author took the committee amendments, but I know there were other amendments that were no. Okay. All right.
They're all included.
So
Okay.
these were not
No.
as much of the discussion today. Thank you.
So I do want to thank you, Senator Dutton, for your hard work. And I do see some good news in this bill. I know as we've wrestled with conservation policy over the years, it's been tough to get the ag community to come forward and put something on the table. They have now done that, which is, I think, a very important step. I think there's more work to do with what they have put on the table, but I do see that as a very positive development. On the other hand, I see some parts of this bill that I think are very, very problematic, and some, in fact, that could cause us to lose the opportunity to achieve a conservation policy that we so desperately need right now. I feel a lot of urgency about this because even though many folks are looking to longer-term, bigger water supply solutions that are maybe decades away, conservation is the tool that will get us through the next decade and that we know that we're going to need for the long haul as the state grows and as climate change happens and as we're forced to stretch our supplies. So we can't really afford to miss this opportunity. And in that regard, I feel like there really is a lot of work that needs to be done on this. Some provisions are actually a step back. Some of the off-ramps, some of the exceptions are entirely too broad. And the bottom line is I think this bill is going to need to look a lot more like AB 49 before I, in good conscience, could support it. But you've expressed a willingness to keep moving down that path, and we know that both houses are engaged in a bicameral effort to try to get there. So in that spirit, I don't have a recommendation as chair on this bill today, but I am going to give you a courtesy vote and hold you to your word that you will continue working to try to bridge those differences.
Well, I look forward to the opportunity to work with you on something that's going to be good for all.
Thank you, Senator. So let's call the roll.
Do pass as amended to appropriations. Huffman.
Aye.
Huffman, aye. Fuller. Fuller, aye. Anderson. Anderson, aye. Arambula.
Aye.
Arambula, aye. Berryhill. Berryhill, aye. Blumenfield. Caballero. Caballero, aye. Fletcher.
Aye.
Fletcher, aye. Krikorian. Krikorian, aye. Lowenthal. Perez. Salas. Yamada.
Not voting today.
Yamada not voting.
That bill is out. Thanks, Senator. I think we have Senator Ducheney here. So welcome, Senator Ducheney. We're ready to hear SB 310.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There we go. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members. We did, as a reminder, that we did take amendments in Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials Committee that need to be adopted today. So we'd ask that those amendments be adopted here. I believe everybody's got a copy of those, which clarify the reimbursement costs for the regional boards, that it would be that the full reimbursement costs that they can, in fact, be fully reimbursed. I mean, it was a clarification amendment from Toxics. The current implementation of California stormwater regulation is neither effective nor equitable. What we're seeking to do here, members, although in a voluntary way initially, is to do stormwater management planning. Just as we've done integrated regional watershed planning, we ought to do it for stormwater too. We can't just keep picking on the one entity that you can get your hands on and then ask them to pay for all of the stormwater. We've got to do it in a watershed planning way if it's going to make sense. We have heard concerns about the fee, but I think it is the only way to do it. The folks who would be all of the permit holders within that region who sign on to a plan and who are asked to implement it would then be those who support the funding for the plan. Ask for your vote.
And I think you just got a motion from Ms. Caballero and a second from Mr. Arambula. So with that, we're happy to hear from your witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ed Manning on behalf of the California Major Builders Council. We're with one of the sponsors of the bill, along with the California Building Industry Association, We've been working for several years now to try to figure out a model for alternative compliance to do watershed planning and implementation. We think this is a promising path. It's not a mandate, but it is another tool in the toolbox that would be created to deal with the problem of stormwater, and we would ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, we've got a motion and a second. Would you like to close, Senator?
No, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your consideration. I think this is an opportunity to, again, move this discussion of stormwater forward. Maybe it could be part of the water use efficiency and the other bills. Ask for your aye vote.
You never know. All right, thank you. Let's call the roll.
Do pass as amended to appropriations. Huffman?
Aye.
Huffman, aye. Fuller? No. Fuller, no. Anderson? No. Anderson, no. Arambula?
Aye.
Arambula, aye. Berryhill? Berryhill, no. Blumenfield?
Aye.
Blumenfield, aye. Caballero? Caballero, aye. Fletcher? Fletcher, no. Krikorian? Lowenthal? Perez?
Are we reopening debate here in the middle of the roll?
And ask the questions.
I'm sorry.
Salas? Salas, aye.
Salas,
Yamada?
oh, aye.
Yamada? Yamada, aye.
That bill is out. And, oh, it's not. We need one. So that'll be on call. And I think Senator Oropeza is being represented by her ledge director, Sean Henschel. Sean, welcome. This is SB 4.
Okay, she needs one. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. With this being deadline week and then also the senator being pulled away on a family emergency, I want to thank the committee for allowing me to present on her behalf today. If I may, I'd like to start by thanking the committee for their work in drafting compromise amendments to try to address the concerns of state parks, and the author is willing to accept those amendments should be before you.
And just for clarification, there were two different amendments mentioned. I think we're talking about the Second Amendment, which states, not the one with guns, but the Second Amendment that our committee staff suggested, which says that the ban will apply to beaches and also in areas in state parks where district superintendents have designated areas and gone through notice requirements. That's the amendment we're talking about.
Absolutely. The author is committed to taking that amendment and then also further commits to continue to work with the State Parks Department. She's very sensitive to their concerns about implementation and is looking forward to continuing to work with them to address their concerns.
All right. Very good. You have some witnesses?
I do. I actually have a broad coalition of local government, health, public employees. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Afrak Vargas. I'm with the California State Firefighters Association, here to support this measure, and we support all measures that help to limit what is the most incendiary device of wildland fires, and that is smoking.
Very good.
I'm Francesca Barbera on behalf of Environment California, also here to support the bill.
Michael Endicott, Sierra Club, California. We're in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christian Foy here on behalf of the City of Long Beach in strong support of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Tony Rice representing the cities of Torrance and Manhattan Beach in strong support of the bill. Thank you.
Tracy Verardo Torres with the California State Parks Foundation in support of the bill with the amendment taken by the author. We are concerned that to the extent that state beaches are surrounded by city and county beaches that have already gone smoke-free, that in fact it de facto sets up state parks to be somewhat of a dumping ground for litter that might come from folks who are smoking who would not otherwise be allowed to be doing that on other adjacent properties. So we support the bill.
Right.
Jim DeBoo on behalf of Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa in support of the bill.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Are there witnesses in opposition to this bill? Seeing none, I'm sorry, is there an other? Mr. Herms.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Bill Herms, Deputy Director, California State Parks. We appreciate the amendments that the author's office has taken that goes a long way towards narrowing and making this bill more manageable. The administration, as always, is open for substantive conversation with the author, and we look forward to doing that.
Thank you. It's great, and I do hope And I think the committee hopes that the author will continue to work with the department going forward, because this is not a time when we want to be burdening the Department of Parks and Recreations, although we do all want to get to a good, sensible policy that reduces smoking and secondhand smoke.
Sure. Thank you.
Good. With that, questions or comments from the committee?
Move the bill.
Okay. Motion and a second. Would you like to close on behalf of the Senator?
Thank the committee, and again,
Mr. Rambula has a question.
Is this your first bill?
Actually, no. I have had more than my share of opportunity, unfortunately.
Well, you look remarkably poised.
That's right.
Thank you, sir. In closing, again, thank the committee for allowing me to present, and very respectfully ask for an aye vote.
All right. Well, thank you very much. The chair's recommendation is do pass. Please call the roll.
Do pass as amended to appropriations. Huffman?
Aye.
Huffman, aye. Fuller? No. Fuller, no. Anderson? No. Anderson, no. Arambula? Arambula, aye. Berryhill? No. Berryhill, no. Blumenfield? Aye. Blumenfield, aye. Caballero? Aye. Caballero, aye. Fletcher? No. Fletcher, no. Krikorian? Aye. Krikorian, aye. Lowenthal? Perez? Salas? Aye. Salas, aye. Yamada? Aye. Yamada, aye.
That bill is out.
Again, thank you.
Thank you. We are prepared now to lift the call on Senator DeCheney's bill. Are we ready for that?
Yeah.
All right. Would you please call the absent members?
It was Krikorian? Aye. Krikorian, aye. Lowenthal? Perez? The bill is out.
That bill is out. We will leave the roll open for 5 minutes so that members can add on. Thanks, everybody.